Two all-new Dogman Werewolf stories January 2024, including Real Werewolf meets Movie Werewolf. But first, Father Werewolf and Son. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I recently saw an episode on your channel about a big werewolf or a dogman walking with a young one. So I'm quite excited to see that another person has had this kind of an experience. I was treated like I was crazy for years by my family. In fact, I don't expect this to change anything as far as they go. But I am grateful for the validation at least. So now I'm going to tell you about what happened to me. I hope you take it as a warning or a cautionary tale, in case you see something strange yourself. Be very careful who you share this information with, or you could be putting roadblocks up to prevent your own future happiness and success. There was a kid I was best friends with for a while who I used to call Kirk, because he was a leader type of guy like Captain Kirk. Later, his family fell apart and he ended up in a mental facility. It was really sad. Having cruddy parents can actually ruin your life and drive you insane. I saw it happen to Kirk. Used to be really outgoing in the life of every class and game and party. After his parents started suing his siblings with frivolous lawsuits to deliberately drive their own offspring into poverty, Kirk became withdrawn and unsure of himself. All of his confidence was gone once he realized his family were such low animals. He felt ashamed, as if it were he who had performed the inexcusable acts of his parents. After not very long, it drove him bonkers. Not the fun kind of bonkers either, I mean the serious kind, where he's never been let out of that facility since. So before I even tell you my story, you already know that my only other witness is literally in an insane asylum. So I don't blame you if you want to join my family in calling me as crazy as my fellow witness Kirk. With all of that out of the way, I will now begin to try to tell you the story both for myself and for my friend Kirk, who sadly can't be among us to speak for himself. I was 18 when this happened, and Kirk had just turned 19 shortly prior. I remember because he had a flip phone with him, which back then was a new kind of cell phone. This was before iPhones and smartphones, but it did take pictures. The coolest part about those cell phones was that they would flip open, like the Captain Kirk TV communicators. My friend Kirk did it just like second season Kirk on TV. Look in one direction dramatically, flip the phone open casually with one hand without looking. So this was an event in our lives. Kirk finally had his communicator. I myself didn't have a cell phone yet. Anyway, that means it had to have been early or mid-November when this happened, since Kirk was born 2 days after Halloween. The year I am certain was 1999, because Kirk and I were both scared of that year. We had heard stories that it was going to be the end of time or the end of civilization. Well, maybe that last part is turning out to be true. But anyway, we were very conscious that it was the year 1999 while this was all going down. The two of us had decided to spend the weekend hiking and camping around the Kincaid Woods area in Boonton, New Jersey. That's right, I said New Jersey, not Pennsylvania. Anyway, we drove out to the end of Powerville Road, parked the used car my mother had given me for my previous birthday, and started walking into the woodline. That night we stayed up after dark telling scary stories for a while. But I got tired early and I went into our tent to crash. After a while, Kirk came in and woke me up, saying there was something I had to see outside. I got up and went out into the chilly night with him, but whatever had been there was gone. I asked him what he had seen, but he was too embarrassed to say, and he told me it might have been an optical illusion or something. I remember I kind of got annoyed at him, and I tried to go back to sleep, but now my feet were cold and sleeping was impossible. Eventually, I just decided to get up a little bit before dawn and get started on my day. It was about then that Kirk finally went inside the tent to crash out. He was snoring almost immediately, and when I heard the sound, at first I thought that's what it was, snoring. By the sound, I mean the sound of the adult dogman or werewolf or whatever that was. It made a few noises, but they were each sort of timed to the snoring of my friend inside the tent, so I was laughing at the bizarre snoring that Kirk was doing. I wasn't even noticing that anyone else was there, until I turned and saw the two of them Almost immediately, I felt my stomach drop because I was thinking this had to have been what Kirk woke me up about earlier. It was still mostly dark when I was seeing them, but it had to have been close to pitch blackout when Kirk had. As much as he was unsure about what he was seeing, that's how much I was sure. No, it wasn't the noonday sun, it was still very early, but it was just light enough, and they were just dark enough, that they were easy to make out in silhouette. And they had these glowing eyes that made them appear to have risen up from hell itself. These were monsters I was seeing, and the only thing keeping me from fainting dead away was that they were walking perpendicular to me, from my right to my left, and I didn't think they had seen me. I couldn't be sure at the time that they were even interested in me. They were very interested in each other, but not in me. The first thing I can think of to compare this scene to is a parent walking their kid to kindergarten or first grade. There was a big, hairy monster, like a Bigfoot, only with a dog face, and he was holding hands with this cute little creature that looked like a real-life charcoal black-colored teddy bear. It was a big werewolf and a teddy bear walking through the woods together. I didn't know what species those were, but I figured they must be some kind of bear with pointed ears that walks upright. I snuck into the tent as quietly as I could, and I woke Kirk up, telling him to be quiet. When I went back outside, he followed me, and then the two of us stood there for a while, transfixed, as we got to witness two of the rarest creatures in all the world walk along like they were on their way to the school bus. The big one was a male, not a female as I had first assumed when I saw it leading the little one. No, this was a male, even in silhouette. I could clearly see that. If it was a bear, it must have had mange, as its chest and belly had no hair on them as far as I could see. It looked like he hit the gym a lot, and there was no body fat on this guy at all. On the adult, I mean. The kid was a little round furball on legs, as I remembered. You almost wanted to say, "Aw," when you saw him. Or her. I mean, who knows? That was a moment I still have dreams about. I wake up into those dreams as though I were really there, in those woods. When it happened, I was scared. My stomach hurt. My feet were cold, and I was afraid I was going to pee on myself. In the dreams, though, it's like the perfect immersive virtual reality replay, where I'm no longer scared or uncomfortable, and I can just study the creatures and enjoy the once-in-a-lifetime privilege of getting to witness something like that. When I look at Kirk in those dreams, though, everything goes wrong. I remember that was the last weekend we got to spend with each other, before his family imploded through controlled demolition, carried out by his parents against him and his siblings. I also remember how Kirk ruined our last perfect moment, and I remember how he did it. The cell phone. The Captain Kirk flip phone. That was what started everything rolling downhill, both on that night and in Kirk's life in general. And how could a flip phone destroy an entire life, you ask? Well, Kirk took his out and tried to take a flash photo of the two upright hairy creatures walking by. Those of you who are my age or older may remember that the cameras on those old flip phones took tiny photos, 640 by 480, and they really needed to be taken in a bright location to have anything come out at all. The exposure time was usually so long that it was very hard not to get blurred images, and the flash did not flash very far at all. So when Kirk took his flash photo, the flash lit up some tall grass and a flying bug in front of him, while everything else in the photo came out a dark, muddy, splotchy brown. We wouldn't learn that until later because the two of us suddenly had something far more pressing to deal with. Now, while that flash did not extend far enough to light up the two creatures, it did get noticed by the two werewolves, and they both turned and saw us. I was watching the big giant one. It looked like the most muscular man ever, but it also looked tired, as though being a father were taking every ounce of its strength every single day. Parts of its fur looked normal, but other parts looked mangy and straggly. Still, he had to have been 10 feet tall if he was an inch. and I began wondering how fast he could run at me if I turned tail right then and made a break for it. None of that ended up mattering though. The big dog-headed werewolf monster never did anything except stand there and stare at us. The cute little son that looked like a teddy bear though, he charged at us, making this sound that was like a whine half the time and sort of like chittering the rest of the time. He reminded me of that little fetish doll from that old Karen Black TV movie from the 70s, except he wasn't carrying a spear. He was equipped with teeth and claws. Even so, he had looked so small and cute next to the Dogman that I didn't immediately react to his charging at us. The little guy was mostly running on 2 legs, but he would drop down to leap over rocks and roots in his way, and at one point I saw him grab onto a tree trunk and swing around it. Now, I didn't see it do that with hands. I saw it do that with long, curved claws that reminded me of grappling hooks. It had a series of 3 or 4 little Wolverine adamantium-looking claws that it could swing from, and they looked long and sharp enough to tear my guts open. Couple that with the fact that a creature who looked tiny next to a huge Dogman didn't look so small anymore once it started getting closer to us. I think that thing was probably 4 feet taller when standing up straight, even though he had looked 2 or 3 feet tall walking next to its parent or guardian over there. So it was a delayed reaction, but Kirk and I ran away. We ran away from our own tent, from our own campsite. Once I saw those claws, I didn't think I'd be safe inside the tent. So I ran, and so did Kirk. At first we ran together, me and my friend. Every so often I'd turn and find that smaller creature still on our tail. He never seemed to catch up, but he never lagged back either. The sounds he was making were scarier than any animal sounds I'd ever heard. He didn't seem like he was fooling around. We had, or Kirk's camera had, really ticked this little guy off, and he was looking to get even, plus more. I remember looking over my shoulder and seeing the creepy monster slice a branch thicker than my fingers off a tree without even putting much muscle into it. I didn't want to think what those grappling hooks might be able to do to me, and I guarantee you that I ran faster than I ever had before. At some point, Kirk and I became separated, which proved to be good luck for me and bad luck for Kirk. The creature chased Kirk all the way to his home, and I've always felt that the trauma caused by that led into his later breakdown. He might have been able to handle the evil machinations of his parents if he hadn't been heading into it broke and coping with trauma that he wasn't even allowed to talk to anyone about. The few times he was honest about the Dogman, he got emotionally abused in return. It wasn't really fair for Kirk, and that was how I learned that life is not fair. A lesson learned from a little baby teddy bear Dogman.
Find that link in the description, honey.
Real werewolf meets movie werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I played a werewolf one time in a low-budget horror film that I won't name. Not because of any legal reason, but just because they put it out under so many titles I can't even remember what it's called anymore. We were filming in Wisconsin of all places, but don't ask me where inside there. It was the woods, basically. I had to get up 2 hours before dawn for makeup, and I didn't usually get to sleep until 11 or 12 the night after. So I was zonked and out of it almost the entire time I was on the set of that movie. It wasn't like I had anything better to do but work and sleep out there in the middle of this wet, swampy forest, though. There was nothing within walking distance, and I was too tired to walk anyway. I just worked, ate donuts, used the porta potty, and then went back to sleep in my trailer, which had its own bathroom as well. I tried not to use that one for reasons which would be too gross to repeat here. So anyway, the entire thing was like a psychedelic trip, both in good and bad ways. The werewolf costume was heavy and hot no matter what. It was built to have a very wide neck that went down to my belly button, and a head and chest piece that was like a hood that they would fasten over me. Once that was in place, one of the PAs would watch the time and at 4 minutes 30, someone would run over to me and take the hood off. Then they would hose me down like I was an animal at the circus. But I loved it because it kept me alive and ticking on those super hot summer days. So one time they had one of the PAs lead me out into the woods and set me in a direction. When the order came over the walkie, all I had to do was walk straight forward. That was it. Eventually I would walk into the shot where they had the camera set up, I was told. I could barely see anything in that costume since I was looking out through tiny holes in the neck. So I heard the director call for action over the walkie, and the PA pushed me off in the direction I was supposed to walk. I entered into some foliage and was cut off both from the kid behind me and the camera crew somewhere in the dark in front. Now this is the point where something went wrong. The conventional explanation is that I wandered off course, but both earlier that day and later on I went over the area we were shooting at, and there really was no room for me to have turned off course. In my opinion, I walked into a different version of that forest, and I'm just lucky I walked back out of it again. But no matter whether I was lost in another dimension, or just lost in a weird little alcove of those woods, in either case, I was not alone when I got there. I looked up and I thought I was seeing my own reflection, and boy did I look surprised to see me, too. I couldn't understand what my image was reflecting off of, so I took a step closer, but my reflection took a step backward. I tried to take my giant wolf head off, but I remembered it was fastened, and then I started to have a panic attack. I was stuck inside that prosthetic Wolfman movie costume that I had to be out of in 4 minutes, or else I was going to pass out and possibly die. And there was some creature that looked just like my costume, standing in that hot forest blocking my way. I was wearing a werewolf costume, so if that creature looked like my costume, that meant that was a werewolf looking at me. And the more it looked, the less frightened it was of me. The more curious it became as well. Then the creature, the hairy bipedal man-like canine thing, it took a step toward me, and I turned around yelling for the PA to help with his voice that was disappointingly high-pitched and squeaky sounding. And now I was at least turned around, if not lost, in a different reality, because when I came out of the leaves into the clearing, it was not the clearing I had left the PA in. It was the clearing the film crew was in, and they absolutely loved the energy I put into making my grand entrance. Then the director told me to go back and do it again more slowly, and I told him to take the mask off me. I got yelled at for costing the production money, but I needed to cool off and I needed to calm down. I also wanted to stall for time so that the werewolf would go back where he came from. I told a couple of people what I saw, and they claimed I was hallucinating and that we needed to get me to a hospital. I was fine though, I just needed to chill for a minute and get myself back in order before going back out there. This time I told them I would direct myself in the scene. I told them just to roll the camera. I had the PA take me to just the other side of my entrance point and then push me back in. I nailed it on the first take, and neither I nor the PA saw any real monsters that time around. Since I was fine for the rest of the night and the rest of the shoot, I really don't think I was exhausted or dehydrated or hallucinating when I saw that werewolf. I just think that he and I walked into the same neighborhood of the Twilight Zone, at the same time, on the same night, or something to that effect. How else can you explain real werewolf meets movie werewolf?
It's a classic pullover, play with the scary stories, got it. It's a classic pullover, put it in a stand-up to go. Available in white, black, navy, gray, or pink. Link is in the description.
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.